Good afternoon. First of all, I apologize for the technical issues that we've had, but we're going to try and solve them as we go along. The presentation or workshop that we have prepared, because there will be a practical side to this afternoon, it will be about OSINT and social engineering. And these two concepts, perhaps we don't associate them directly, but they do have a lot of common aspects. And that's what we're going to comment here this afternoon. I'd also like to thank INCIBE and for the jury for selecting our proposal, and thank all of you for being here, of course. Quickly, I'd just like to introduce us. My name's Vicente Aguilera. I'm a partner and founder of a company that works in telecommunications. It was set up in 2001. After the boom of the .com companies, and at the time, security, especially here in Spain, was something that practically did not exist in the professional world. I began there in 2006. I founded a capital risk company to do with development, and here in INCIBE we have a hackathon, and I'm a member of that jury, and that's very much related to development, especially in free software and giving something back to the community. The fact that these are open source projects doesn't mean that they're not quality projects for the professional world. We use them very often, and they are very great quality projects. We also have Carlos Seisdedos here. He is part of the team in Internet Security Auditors, and I'm sure you all know who he is already, since he has done a lot in terms of research and in the world of intelligence as well. He's very well known in the field of terrorism and so on, but you will see that his knowledge covers many different industries. We're going to try and do a practical workshop here this afternoon, but obviously we need to put this into context. We're not going to go into a great deal of detail, because we've been doing courses on this for some time now, but we're just going to give a few different ideas. It's about the world of OSINT linked to social engineering, and not from the offensive point of view, but the measures that we can take in order to defend ourselves from the attacks that we're going to see. So it's a positive use of what we're going to be commenting. There will be a short introduction during which Carlos will set the context and where OSINT comes in and what is the value of OSINT. We'll talk about the types of attacks that we are subjected to, because we've been talking about this for several weeks now, and we're going to talk about social engineering as well. We'll speak briefly about this, because I'm sure everybody here knows a lot about this subject. But we're going to use different OSINT techniques in order to exploit the confidence that people place in social networks, and this will take us to the last part, which is about the best practices in this field. First of all, thank you for being here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Let us begin by taking a look at this first screen, on which we have an indication of the development over the last few years in terms of attacks in the country. This shows the main concerns that different countries have, how it has evolved since 2012, when it was not such a great concern in different countries, to now to 2019. And there are different attacks. Of course, in 2014, that increased significantly. 2015, it almost went away. 2016, once again, it was a little bit concerning due to leaks. 2017, things became a little bit more serious, and attacks and fraud could be a significant concern for stability in countries. And now it has been consolidated as an attack for countries on the whole. In Spain, for example, we had to update the strategy for security in the country, and based on the background and the speed with which things were changing, there was a need for a national security plan. And we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about cyberspace as a common space, the threats and challenges of the cyberspace, the proposals, and specifically we are concerned with the threats and the challenges in cyberspace. And that's what we're going to be talking about this afternoon in this workshop. So why have things changed and why do we have these concerns? There are a number of characteristics that we will see, and these have created this boom, if we can call it that. First of all, there's a financial cost. If you would like to infect or affect a web page or remove a system, you don't actually need a lot of money in order to be able to do that. And furthermore, if you wanted to avoid a competitor actually coming to you and physically attacking you, all they had to do was to put a bit of silicone in the lock and to stop somebody actually coming and attacking your physical facilities. But now we have things in the cloud or anything on the net. We don't actually need a physical location in order to be able to do an attack of that kind. And we also now have the huge number of tools that are available. Any of the available platforms have a number of tools that can attack our security, such as on GitHub, and they can damage us significantly. So at the same time as we had this boom in the kind of tools that are available online, there has also been a number of simple tools, and we can even find on YouTube a number of manuals of how to work with these tools. We don't even really need to know how they work. We just go to a tutorial, a video tutorial, and follow the steps. This didn't used to happen. Cyber criminals had to set up their own systems many years ago, but that's not the case now. Obviously, the effect of an attack is huge. A simple email can stop a company from functioning, and so these attacks have an ability to have a big impact. There's a reduced risk for the attacker. There are anonymous networks, and therefore most attackers have a sense of false security that they can work as they wish and be totally anonymous. The security forces in Spain are very competent, and that's not really the case here in Spain. So what we have now is cybercrime as a service. People who specialize in different techniques, and they work with other people. You don't need to know about everything. Around a month ago, in a Telegram channel dealing with this, there was a little group that was saying, hey, I'm a specialist in ransomware. I'm looking for people who can give me domains that might be vulnerable, and we'll come to an agreement. For every domain that you give me, I'll give you a percent of what I am earning. So now they don't even bother to scan web pages or services in order to obtain that information. They come to agreements. You do the scanning, I'll do this bit, and they come to an agreement. Plus, we now have hyperconnectivity in our lives. We have 2, 3, maybe telephones, or even our things that we have at home are all connected. So we have hyperconnectivity in our lives, and this is leading to overexposure to attacks. Last of all, what we also have is that just until a few years ago, when we would talk about conflict, we were talking about 4 areas. We were talking about war or conflict. It would be earth, sea, space, or air, and they could easily identify these attacks. But now what we have in cyber attacks is something completely different. What you can see here on the screen is an idea of the characteristics of the actors that could be involved in cyber attacks. So the cyberspace isn't actually a domain, it's a transversal domain. Any activity can be related to this. And this is why it is so very difficult to attribute an attack to a person or to a country even. It depends on the different states of the attacks. So based on this, we can even come to the conclusion or to understand that there is a 6th domain, there is a 6th domain, which is the cognitive one. We are being used, in other words. We are being used for misinformation, for rumors, and the information, the activity that we go through is needed in order to carry out attacks. During the last elections, in the US, and even in Brexit, this is evident. It's the influence of information on the citizens in order to select Brexit, for example. So, moving on to social engineering then, what do we understand by this? Social engineering, a simple definition of social engineering, would be when a person makes us do or not do something that we would not have done by ourselves. If we have a look at this image on here, you'll be able to see it clearly. These are complex. Now we have more complex systems. They're more difficult to penetrate. And if I can't penetrate a system, I'll go to the weakest side. And who is that? It's man. It's people. So if I want to get close to somebody, it's very easy to get close to that click, to what I need in order to carry out my attack. So within social engineering, we have hunting and farming. And in terms of social engineering, the capacity that we have in order to carry out a direct or indirect attack. But I don't want to extend on this too much. So in the words of Kevin Mitnick, I don't know if you know of him, he was the first social engineer. He based his work on 4 main points. There are 4 points through which we can be attacked. The first point is we all want to help. The second point is that when we get to know somebody, we always confide in that person and feel close to that person. And the third, we also find it very hard to say no. When somebody asks something of us, they ask us a favor, we say yes because we feel like we can't say no. And so attackers make the most of those kinds of situations. When somebody asks you where to go, how to get somewhere, for example, you tend to help and you just give them the right answer. And of course, last of all, everybody likes to have something nice said about them. Oh, how clever you are and how lovely you are. That brings down our defenses. And all of those elements take us to a point where it makes it more easy for us to be attacked. And now we'll talk a little bit about OSINT, but we'll allow Vicente to come in at this point. We'll talk about OSINT, but I'm sure that if you've come into this room, many of you will have heard of OSINT, Open Source Intelligence. It's been around for a few years. And with many new innovations, it began within the military field. In 1941, when the FBIS was set up, this was before the CIA, American intelligence, the idea was to monitor foreign communication systems and to follow what they were doing. That was already what we call OSINT. We've been using open sources since that time to obtain information, to process it, and to give us some of the registers that we've been talking about. So this is what OSINT is all about. And of course, it's related to public information. We often say that information is the petroleum of this century, or information is power. Information is not power, intelligence is power. Information on its own, it needs a little bit more. It needs intelligence. And that's what we're going to try and see here today. There's a short video here. I hope we can see it. Just for 1 minute, and I hope it'll serve as an introduction.
¿Quién decide la música que escuchas? El periódico que lees, la ropa que llevas.
The clothes you're wearing, the newspaper that you're reading, the photos that you put online, the children you have. Who decides all of this? The party that you vote for. Who decides what you need? What makes you fall in love? What worries you? Who decides what kind of person you want to be? Who decides for you? Who decides for us?
Puede que no seamos ni tú ni yo quienes
Perhaps it's not me nor you.
Pero entender que no somos realmente libres.
But we have to understand that perhaps we are not entirely free, but understanding this is perhaps the only way of actually being free. This is very interesting. The decisions that we take and the impact that has on us. And in fact, this is actually an advert that's actually telling us that you're not actually free. This is what we were talking about in the previous point, making the most of us and manipulating different techniques and information. Carlos and I were talking on the train yesterday from Barcelona, and we were working, and at one point I connected and looked up at the film that was going on in the train at the time, and it was just talking about information. At the point it was in like a supermarket. You went to the supermarket and you bought what you wanted to buy, but perhaps you were being guided to what you were buying because of the information that they were inputting. So, how many of you are going to buy something on Black Friday? Or maybe you've already done it, and perhaps it's not something you actually need, but you want to make the most of that opportunity. So we receive a great deal of information, and we're going into the points of hacking and ethics here. But what is this all about? It's about information and data. This happens in just a minute on the internet nowadays. There are over 4 million searches in Google, many messages, 42 million, and 90,000 tweets. And all of this information that we generate is being exploited by somebody. There is nothing that is for free. We have to understand, and we have to understand this and accept it. People don't invest a lot of money in different applications so that we can just enjoy and have fun. They know who our contacts are, how many hours we spend using the application, what our network is, a load of data that is available, and it is moved and used by large companies and purchased by other parties and sold onto third parties. But we're not going to go into detail on that. We're going to stick with what we're talking about. But all the information that we're giving and publicizing, companies have mechanisms in order to be able to use this, and as we will see as we go on in the presentation, there are also another group of people who are criminals and who make the most of that information.
Yes, we were talking about the FBIS, which was the predecessor of CIA, and we were talking about that earlier. But then CIA says that the percentage of the information that information agencies create nowadays is in its greatest majority taken from publicly available information, so that you understand the real weight of these sources. So why is OSINT, just to get into context, there's no specific definition, there's no clear definition, there are different approaches to talk about it, but I think the two that we have here on the screen are the ones which are closest. It's basically generating intelligence from information gathered from publicly available sources. It's been processed and it's been treated in a way that it has allowed us to generate an intelligence product that fulfills the needs that have been expressed before and that we transmit in time and to the people that want that information, because creating a quality product is worthless if we don't hand it in time. Sometimes if it has lower quality but you do hand it in on time, it is more useful rather than whether it's perfect. If you talk about a potential terrorist attack after it has been perpetrated, then there's no use, for example. So OSINT is a discipline of intelligence. There are many disciplines within the field of intelligence. OSINT might be one of the oldest, but we talk about geospatial intelligence. There's something that started being talked about in 2005, came from the US, and it taps into everything that has to do with intelligence based on image analysis, picture analysis, concerning human activity in specific geographical areas. But you see HUMINT as well, human intelligence, which is even older than OSINT, and this is information that has been gathered through human sources, espionage as we know it, information that has been gathered through interrogations or through witnesses that have testified in a specific scenario. You have also financial, cyber intelligence, corporate intelligence. You have as many disciplines as you can imagine. So what is the issue? Because if we're talking about OSINT, which are sources that everyone has access to, well, it isn't as beautiful or that easy, because otherwise everyone would be an information or intelligent analyst. There are three main issues that we summarize here. Perhaps its greatest advantage is also its greatest fault. There's an excess of information. There's so much information that finding quality information is like finding a needle in a haystack. So you have to be very accurate on what you want, because you don't have unlimited time. So you have to select your sources carefully. You have to verify, because there comes another issue, because there might be information that is wrong, or that is, intensely being made wrong. So some people might actually give information that is fake, so that we actually draw or focus our attention on that information which is not the right one. And then you've got also the sources and whether they are sources that you can trust or not, because when we gather information, for example, from social networks, that is a source of information. So is newspapers, the minutes of Congress, or a radio program. Any kind of information that is publicly accessible. And I'm not talking about free information. It doesn't have to be free, but it is information that everyone can have access to, even if it's paying or via a subscription or anything of the sort. If it's legal, so even if you have to pay for it, then it would be the sources that we're talking about. But sometimes we need to verify. We cannot just trust any source, because that source could be giving us fake information. So we always need to check and double check. We have to contrast the information that we get from quality sources. Just a little apart, when we talk about fake information, we think that it might be countries or organizations who have spread it, but sometimes it's actually a business owner who wants to disappear from Google because they don't want for people to talk about that. They just fill the net with wrong information, so that people draw their attention to that and forget about what they have done, which they don't want people to talk about. So as we were saying, information sources can be very varied, and this takes us to the intelligence cycle. And with this, we're going to finish this first part of the workshop, this presentation. So generating intelligence is not an anarchical process. We don't start just from anywhere and finish just anywhere, but rather there are different stages. This is a theoretical model. Then every time we adapt it to our needs. For example, CIA has 5 stages. Other entities have 4 stages. So you have definitely one planning phase, which is phase number 1. That's where we ask the questions that we need to answer, what our priorities are going to be, the different contexts that we have, what additional information we have as well. And that's when we start selecting sources. Where are we going to get our information from? And that is the second stage, acquiring information. And this is very important as well, because as we were saying earlier, we need to find sources that we can trust. We need to check those sources. Then we will need automatic tools that allow us to gather all this information. And of course, we will need to process that information, because we might be getting information from a Russian portal, and because we don't speak Russian, we need to get that information translated. So gathering more information does not necessarily mean that we have a higher quality product. Sometimes it's actually in our detriment, because the more information we have, the more time we will need to process that information. And the next stage is getting all that information together. We have to import that information so that it has a format that's easy to interpret by the analyst, and that's how we get onto the next stage, which is analysis precisely. And that is where our analysts play a really important role, because they are the ones that have to put together all the pieces in the jigsaw and draw the conclusions that they will then have to report to the decision maker. So this is a cycle that goes on and on and on all the time. And on the first stage, when we're acquiring information, we have to talk to the decision maker to see if the information that we're gathering is the right one, or whether we need to find new sources. And talking about the cycle, here we've seen, for example, that there are 6 stages. As Vicente was saying, this can vary depending on the body or agency. But remember that the first 4 stages, as we will see now, are being used by cyber criminals as well. They also obtain information, they process that information. So this cycle is not only for agencies, cyber criminals do use this cycle as well. Indeed, and what used to be before a more manual job and not so accurate, because analysts before used to work, as we saw in TV programs, they had their blackboards and their flow charts that they did by hand. That is what they used to do before. So the relationships that we could figure out before were much less than we can do now, because nowadays we can have a really accurate analysis and find quality information about any objectives, be it a person, a company, as we will see afterwards. And that we find as well in cybercrime, because before, when they launched their attacks, we had the famous Nigerian letters that were coming to any domain. But now we're finding that the attacks are targeted to a specific company. They do a study and they go directly to target that company, and they know exactly how they have to process the information. So intelligence, as we were saying, is not just for intelligence agencies. It's not just for NSA or CNI or Mossad. Anyone with the tools that we have nowadays available to us at home, we can obtain information which is extremely sensitive about any objective, and this is tapped into at different levels. We will talk about this later, but one of the things is what we can do ourselves at home about the information that we have made available publicly, detect which of that information is actually sensitive and which part of this information we don't want to have public at all. So we would have an objective, which could be a person, a company, or a group of people. These are the main objectives that we work with. So when we apply OSINT techniques, what we do is to try and obtain as much information as possible about these objectives. And in order to do that, we have different tools. And many of them are actually open source. Now, it is clear that with the growth of social networks, there was a sort of explosion of information. As we were saying in the infographic before, we are generating an amount of information that was unthinkable before. We are creating more information now than we have ever created in the history of humankind. And we now have tools to make this information acquisition automatic, and actually in real time, we can process the information that we're requiring. Because at the end of the day, it's all about analyzing this information and obtaining as much information as possible, because the more information we have, the more efficient our attack will be. If you wanted to rob a bank, for example, you would not just wake up one day, get your balaclava and go to the bank. You wouldn't be very successful. If you really wanted to rob a bank, what you would do is go a couple of times to that bank, even several times during months even. You would locate the accesses, entries, exits, CCTV cameras, the schedule, opening hours, the schedule of the security personnel. So you would do research, proper research. And this is exactly what we do in the virtual world. And the more information and the more patient we are, and the more time the attacker has, the more they will know about us. And obviously this will also depend on the objective, because if a cyber criminal targets someone, they will already know whether they're going to need an email or whether they will need information about that person or organization on social networks or from their family. And this is what is going to set the guidelines of the way we're going to acquire information about that objective. So at the end of the day, what we are telling you right now is not a matter of magic. It's not we just draw a wand and get as much information about someone as we can. Rather, as we're going to see now, we have tools available to everyone nowadays that will allow us to obtain information, or cyber criminals can actually obtain information about us and can tap into that information and use it against us. Well, to have a first approach, what we usually do is use browsers and the different search engines, and because we started a bit later, we're going to do this a bit quicker than we were going to do it before. Here we go. For example, one of the things that we always need to bear in mind, and this is very important when you launch a search about an objective, and this is what cyber criminals do as well. As I was saying, first of all, what you do is you open 4 different browsers, and in these different browsers, we're going to get different information. What does this mean? It means that when we want to find information which is relevant, in this case for cyber criminals, or just to assess our overexposition on the internet, this is very relevant. So, for example, we have looked at Rodrigo Rato, first person that came to mind. As you can see, we see Wikipedia, El País, 20 Minutos. These are Spanish newspapers. If we do it, if we launch the search on Bing, we get Wikipedia as well. But after that, the results are completely different to the ones that we had before. Because how many of you actually go over than the second page? Some people will, but in general, people do the first, second, third page maximum, and they didn't keep on going. And this is why it's important to have some flexibility when looking for information. With Yandex, for example, Yandex is a specific search engine for Eastern European countries and Russia. And this actually gives us results that have nothing to do with all the others. And there's another search engine that I really like. I don't know if you know it. It's called Carrot. And when we launch searches, here we can group the results. Even if we have about 300 links in our result, what it does, first of all, is to allow us to see everything grouped. For example, we have Bankia here, then we have IMF chief, for example. So I don't have to go over all the results because I have the results grouped by subject, so I can go directly to the file that I am interested in, and I will get on the right-hand side all the results that are related to that category that the search engine has done for us. And then we also have a map visualization, and it is grouped by subgroups according to what the engine thinks it's more relevant to our search. So this is really good for presentations and infographics, but as you can see, we even have a second sub-level to obtain information, in this case about this person. Yeah, if we're looking for information about someone who has a very common name, for example, we could get crossed results from many different people. But if we know that they have a specific position in an organization, then we can add that, and with here, just with a click, we can locate the kind of person. There's also obviously the Boolean operators, and we're not going to go into them, although they're really interested, but we don't have time today, really. But just so you know, they're really useful for this kind of searches. So, because we were looking up information about someone who is related to the business world, or who is a businessman in this case. But if we want to get to a company or an organization, there are different pages. In this case, for example, this is we have Liberborn. I don't know if you know it, but what this page does is to download and index the content of BORME, which is the official diary of the company's registry in Spain. So every time there's a new person coming into a company, someone being fired, everything is registered here. In the central company's registry, even their ID number. This is a pay source of information, but it's publicly available. So with this site, we just type a name and it gives us information. In this case, for example, Amancio Ortega, and we obtain exclusive information about all the positions that he has held, and this is information that it would be more difficult to obtain from other sources. I think we've lost the presentation. I thought we had the same thing that happened to us in Malaga last year, where we lost the screen. Well, as we were saying, if we start looking into the information that we get, we see that he's held different positions at Inditex. But then if we go on to Inditex, then we see the board of Inditex, for example. So if we wanted to have a specific scam to do with Inditex, or if we wanted to know who the person in charge of accounts or yearly accounts on Inditex is, then this kind of tool would be really, really useful, wouldn't it?
In order to see it in a graphic format, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to do this or not. We have this search engine in which the results are very, very visual, because one of the things we mentioned beforehand is that, I don't know if you can see it here, we have Amancio Ortega in the middle, and then around him we see that he has a connection to 5 different companies. So if I click on that map, we will get a graph with that information. And if I want information on a given company, I can see the elements that I'm looking for. For example, if it's family, education, and I select the information that I'm interested in regarding that person. And the information is expanded, so you get new information about that company. And this information can be very useful. So based on this information, I can get data to find out who is responsible for the board of directors. Here we have a number of keys that tell us the relationship between one and the other. And on the right-hand side, I can select, depending on the type of entity of the company, I can select what I'm interested in.
Y esto lo que nos permite es, bueno, poder, incluso un segundo, a ver. También lo que nos permite este LibreBorme.
What this allows me to do is the LibreBorme is an access through the API as well. So if, for example, I put in a little script and it allows us to tag to LibreBorme, and it tells us we have found one person with this name and the database. He has 7 current roles. It gives me the information on those different roles. And there's a historical data regarding the companies that person has worked for. So in order to do an analysis in terms of an objective in a company, then this is rather relevant. We talked about selecting your sources carefully and also the formats in which that information is provided. In this case, there's an API, and that's the most direct manner. But we have to develop sometimes vectors, specific tools in order to acquire our information, in order to be able to import it onto our platform and to give it a global treatment. Especially this is true when we have a lot of information. It needs to be stored in order to situate it either in a database or an Excel or whatever system in order to be able to then later use it. Let's have a look at an example. We can see that it's not so easy. The information we saw about Rodrigo Rato, when I do the consultation about him, now I have 5 results that could coincide with that search. So I've got 5 Rodrigo Ratos. First of all, it gives me one of them. This is de Rato Alarco Rodrigo in this particular case. And based on the types of companies that come up, I know it's the right person, the person I was looking for. The second objective is de Rato Figueredo Rodrigo, a different person. It says he has 24 different positions. And we see a relationship with the Caja Madrid, the bank in Madrid, and I know that perhaps this is the person I'm looking for. Above, we had the relationship, the list of companies that he is no longer related to, and then down here we have de Rato Figueredo Rodrigo. So when people, companies are registered on the file, there's a difference between if there's a space between one surname and the next. So if we see the next one, the next example is de Rato y Figueredo Rodrigo, a slight difference in the surnames. So when we do the search, if we only look at the first one, we probably wouldn't have found the rest of the companies. So depending on when we do the searches or whatever tool we're using, we have to do combinations because there might be more information out there. We try to monitor ourselves, even to see kind of what information about ourselves is out there and a third party might have access to. if we have a number of keywords that we put into Google, so whenever something is published, and we can get an alert on that, we need to generate different combinations. First your name and then your surname and then your name, and so on. This is a piece of advice that we'll talk about a little bit more later on. We have to get used to this. We have to get used to searching for ourselves on the internet, using our names, surname, using our ID, reversing the name and the surname, using our car registration number. So that, see if people could do something against using that information. Or using Gmail or any other kind of tool, we can set up alerts and set up different combinations for this, so that if there is something going against you, or even if there is a fine that has come up in your name, then it can be detected. Many people are not interested in doing this because they say, oh, who's going to be looking at my information? But if you look at Marta Pirano on the internet, if you look up a talk that she given, and it's on YouTube, they're just 9 minutes of talk. It's a TED talk, but I think it's very interesting, and I'm sure you'll find a lot of information in there. We're going to do something different now. Let's hope it works, to show you a number of tools and applications. So when we get the go-ahead, we'll go ahead with that.
Sí, no estamos esperando que cubriesen. Hemos tenido que poner al jefe un atril.
Vamos a ver.
We've needed to put the computer on this little platform in order to be able to do this.
El problema de las pantallas, los adaptadores.
This is the kind of issue that we have with different screens and adapters and so on. But we'll get there now.
La resolución, mejora el monitor. No veo nada.
I can't see anything right now.
Tengo el cursor aquí. Vale. Muy bien. Vamos a ver cómo lo podemos hacer.
Let's see how we can arrange this.
Bien, vamos a ver diferentes herramientas muy sencillas.
We'll see very different, very simple tools, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with many of them.
Básicamente, confiar en que siempre estarán disponibles para nosotros, ¿no? De hecho, muchos servicios.
These are tools that have many different purposes. When we're talking about searching for information, there's not just a series of tools, but we don't necessarily have to think they'll always be available for us to use. Some are free and then you have to pay for them. Some are used and then they're closed. So we have to have different tools available in order to be able to work with them. One of the objectives that we might come across are actually people. And we can gather a variety of information about people. We can get a variety of information, as I was saying, such as email addresses, telephone numbers, aliases, their nicknames in social media. So we have a very simple tool here, just so that you can get an idea of what we can do. And in this case, it's using email addresses. We will attempt to obtain information about an objective. So we have our target. This is a person. We don't know where this person works or what kind of email addresses he or she may have. But we'd like to do attack regarding social engineering. There are different types of social engineering. There's the physical type, when somebody goes somewhere and tries to actually physically get into the facilities. For example, an operator who tries to access a place. But there are also other kinds of, such as phishing. And it's not just malicious emails being sent through a given email account. This can be done also through SMS or text messages, or even a traditional letter in which we receive in our home, and it's got a logo and everything, and it looks very formal. And we're told to call a given number or to access an internet address. And pretty much for everything nowadays we use our email. We hardly use faxes or even regular letters. And email is one of the main areas for attack, whether it's through phishing, for other kinds of tools. Is it not working? Well, we're working on it. We'll get there in the end. I don't know if we're going to be lucky or not, if we're going to be able to connect. I'd like to access a web surface. In this case, it's called Hunter. This web surface is free, and we can use it for a series of consultations if we pay for them. For example, if we would like to get information about a company, for example, CNN, we put in the name of the company.
En este caso, pues retorna 1.190 direcciones de email asociadas a esta empresa. Si buscábamos, como decía Carlos antes, cómo aproximarnos a
quickly we will receive all the email addresses that have been indexed for that company. There are 1,190 email addresses associated to this business, and this is a way of getting in contact with people because we have their email address, and we have other people maybe working with us and looking for different people in different departments, and we can get to them through those other people. Not only do we have the email addresses here, but we also have the pattern that those email addresses use. So we have the first name, followed by a dot, and then the surname at cnn.com. Sometimes there are different combinations. We have just the first letter with or without a dot. And what we need this for, actually, we could actually download all these email addresses and incorporate this into our analysis. So what else could we do with this information?
Hacer la búsqueda o directamente en la página en la que estéis visitando una página, Facebook, por ejemplo, cliquéis en la extensión y os va a retornar.
You could go to Chrome or Firefox and look up Hunter, and you can incorporate this. You do a click on the icon and do the same as what I've done. You do a search, or wherever you are from the page where you are, you put in the link, and it will give you the email addresses of that page that you're looking at. So we've got the format of the email addresses in this particular case. What could this be used for?
Además, dos amigos, ¿no? Félix Bezo y Yaiza Rubio, son españoles y bueno, pues han hecho herramientas que son utilizadas, pues
I don't know if you're familiar with these tools that are developed by a couple of friends. They developed this tool. They're Spaniards, and they've developed tools that are used on a global level, such as Linux and Kali and so on. It's related with OSINT. So In this particular case, let's have a look at what we could do.
Vamos a coger uno, por ejemplo, test@gmail.com, ¿no? ¿Qué podríamos hacer? Podríamos
We could look up email addresses. Let's have a look at one of the email addresses that we found previously. Let's take test@gmail.com, for example. So based on the email addresses that we generated previously, we could put them into a file, and we could take over the name of the file into this section and then do a search. We could see if this email address has been recorded on any kind of platform online. For example, this is one in InfoJobs. It's available in InfoJobs and Twitter in this particular case. So we know this person has a Twitter account. So we could try and get a little bit closer using the information through InfoJobs. Perhaps this person has put a comment there or a CV there, or we could use Twitter because we know that that person is using that email account. What else could we do? So this reframework also allows us to generate patterns or to generate users in a random manner. You might have a person, but you don't know his or her email address or what their address is. So we could make up random combinations and do a search on these platforms. We could also use cross-linked, and this searches for information and email addresses on LinkedIn. We'll use the pattern that we had before. For example, we would type in first dot and then last at cnn.com. In this particular case, that's the pattern. We put in the name of the company, and what we're doing is searching for email addresses in LinkedIn. We could have done this with Hunter before. But here we have searches using different search engines, such as Google and so on. And we had a number of email addresses that we could combine and link to other platforms with other kind of skips, such as Dimitri or other recognition skips. We have quite a number of results here, 438 in this particular case, related to this email address. They follow this pattern, they all follow this pattern, the email addresses, so it's name dot surname. So we can use this information and extract something from it. So we'll give a nickname inside this file. So we're going to remove the domain name. So from the start of the page, we'll have this regular expression, which would be, for example, A to Z, and a space and dot, and these repeated characters. So it would look in the names file that we generated, and now we have a list of all the names. What can we do with this list of names? We can write in alias txt, and we store all the nicknames. And now we put in sudo usu-fi. Now we're going to cross over a file that we created previously. It was L alias txt. And the tool, what it's going to do is try and see where that alias is registered on different platforms, maybe in Wallapop or any other kind of social media. So you know where that email is registered. It would search in almost 300 platforms, and this would be the process that we need to go through.
Well, this is one example, but we're going to see how we could combine email addresses, aliases, etc. Another interesting point is metadata.
Por ejemplo, dentro de las cosas que hacía era extraía metadatos.
A few years ago,
que es una herramienta open source que también
around
puedes descargar,
2014, I think it was, I created a tool
información publicada, que es información pública de Twitter,
and
la recopila de forma masiva.
at the time, one of the things it did was to extract metadata. This is an open source tool that you can also download and use. And what it does is to gather information using Twitter's API, so publicly available information on Twitter. It gathers it massively, processes it, and it gives it in a way that it's easily interpreted by an analyst. So, for example, when you upload a picture or any sort of image to a social network, the social network will clean the metadata that it might have, but it didn't used to be like this. Not that long ago. If you look at this picture, this is Steve Wozniak profiles, the Apple's co-founder. I think it's broken. No, there it is. Well, what did he used to do? What Twitter used to do for a long time was to delete metadata, which didn't used to do at the beginning. But, for example, it would leave the profile picture or metadata that had already been uploaded from pictures would stay there until someone deleted them. And this is what happened with Steve Wozniak's profile picture, for example. Surprise party for his 60th anniversary. So this is someone well known and we know when they were born, but for example for someone who's not that well known, it's important because that could be used as a password or, you know, and any other, it could be any other way of recovering a secret. So here you get the name of the person who took the picture. It's someone very well known in the United States. What distance this picture was taken from. So, for example, if you need, so the person knew that the picture was taken with this person knowing, so it wasn't stolen, the type of camera model. All these metadata, there's still social networks nowadays where we can find this information. For example, if we go on Flickr, we have here all sorts of pictures. Let's search, for example, for Microsoft. And we get this picture, for example. This is a building. Now, here at the bottom right, you see that you can download this picture. So we're going to copy the URL. And we're now going to go on to another site, which is going to tell us and analyze the metadata from this picture. There are many different services. Let's try this one, for example. So we go onto this site and we either upload the picture, which is copy the URL, paste the URL that we had just copied, and then we can get the metadata for the picture. Now, you can see that there's even pictures as metadata. So, for example, miniature pictures that you upload before the actual picture is uploaded. It might be that this miniature picture is not really a picture, it's just a picture within the picture. So maybe this miniature picture, sometimes you edit a picture, you cut it a little bit, or you change the eyes, or you cut it, you crop it so the person next to you cannot be seen. But in the miniature picture, if that one has not been modified, then you can still have the original picture where the other person is next to us and everything. What else do we get? We get information about when that picture was taken, the camera it was taken with, it was an icon, we can see the model here, the date it was taken on. So we have to be very careful with everything we upload, not only pictures, but also documents and everything else. I'm not going to go into too much detail about other tools. There are many tools that you can use to extract metadata from PDF, Excel documents or files, etc., that might be published online about a company and then may reveal usernames, credentials, usernames that you can use to attack and access a service. For example, the platforms, Microsoft platforms that they use, internal routes, almost anything that could allow us to target attacks against those people. I'm going to leave this here because we don't have that much time, and I'm going to show you a different aspect now, another kind of information that we can extract. Someone might say, well, if I don't want my privacy to be at risk, then I just won't use the internet. Although this is really difficult nowadays, isn't it? Because whether we want it or not, we are online. Even if we didn't want to be online, there are CCTV cameras in the streets and security cameras which are filming us, and that can be tapped into. Or, for example, a video from a TV channel, and we appear on television. So whilst Vicente is getting this ready, I just wanted to say, when it comes to metadata, that we always have to be very careful which platforms we're working with, because there is a platform which is supposedly one of the most anonymous, such as Telegram. Well, Telegram does not delete metadata, so everything that you upload onto Telegram, unless you have deleted your metadata yourself, you will know that that metadata will stay in all the files you've shared. Now, going back to what I was saying, I'm going to load a video that we're going to watch right now. This is a concept test that we've generated. This is a real video from a demonstration in Barcelona, a recent demonstration in Barcelona. After the judgment on the Catalan process, you will not hear anything because the audio is really, it would make a real impact. We didn't get it right now, but we see lots of people. These media can be uploaded by users, but even by the police. But they can even go on social networks if users upload that. So what we're going to do now, because artificial intelligence allows us, and it does it better than us, to recognize people, identify people. If someone is a bit blurred and we cannot see it properly, artificial intelligence will identify it depending on different features. So this can be very interesting for different purposes. For example, we're going to see now in real time, this is a concept test, we're going to see how, with facial recognition techniques, it's going to identify the people that are on the video in real time. We're not getting the pictures of everyone because there's many people, but you can see, for example, where exactly they are. You can see there in red where they are. Some people are very, very hard to see because they're very, very small on the image, on the big image. So what could we use this for? For example, the security forces could use this information to see who are the people who are on the first line and are actually causing all the issues. How could we automate this? For example, if we know that these people belong to a specific group, if this is a demonstration from particularly ideology, we could search for profiles and social networks that are linked to that ideology. We can even check the followers they have, the friends they have. We can get all the pictures from their profiles and do automatically something as what I'm going to show you now.
La cuenta de perfil de Twitter.
I've downloaded the profile picture of Carlos from his Twitter account.
Esta es la imagen que tiene Carlos ahora mismo, es un perfil de Twitter. Lo que he hecho, bueno, ya lo he descargado para ir ganando tiempo, es descargar de mi timeline de Twitter. Me he descargado a través de
This is a picture that Carlos has on his Twitter profile right now, and I have downloaded it to save time. And so what I have done is from my Twitter timeline through a tool, I have downloaded my media. And you can actually download media from people at a specific time. So I have downloaded the multimedia content of my 200 tweets. And in one of these, there's a picture of Carlos. So what I'm asking the tool to do is to find this picture of Carlos that I have downloaded. Hold on, let me just check that I have downloaded it first, because I might have deleted it.
haya lugar a dudas, ¿no? Vamos a ejecutar tiempo líquido. Lo que voy a hacer es simplemente
I'm going to do this very quickly.
De mi perfil. Vamos a analizar, por ejemplo, los últimos 100 tweets y vamos a decir que descargue el contenido multimedia. Bueno, que analice el contenido multimedia y que lo descargue.
So there's no room for doubt. So I'm back on TinfoLeak.
No vamos a decir nada más.
And from my profile, we're going to analyze, say, the last 100 tweets. And I'm going to ask it to download and to analyze the multimedia content from these tweets. That's all we're going to do in this case.
Vale. Y ahora empieza a buscar.
And I'm going to
empieza a buscar información, empieza a analizar los últimos 100 tweets que le he indicado, los está descargando, está analizando solo descargando el contenido multimedia. Vale, ya lo ha descargado y ahora vamos a...
And now it is launching the search. It's analyzing the last 100 tweets as I have asked it to do. It's downloaded the multimedia contents. Now it's downloaded. And now we can execute it from here, and let's see if it identifies the picture that I've asked it to identify.
A ver dónde tengo el fichero que ha descargado.
Si no conocéis la herramienta, merece la pena que la utilicéis. Si tenemos tiempo, que os lo muestre Vicente, si no intentaré mostrarlo yo.
Voy a hacer esta demo y hasta ya te dejo, Carlos.
Vale, no me refiero a ese aspecto, me refiero que es muy potente porque es una herramienta de recopilación y da información sobre las franjas.
If you don't know this tool, it is worth it to have a look at it. If we have time, Vicente will show it to you. Yeah, I'm just going to do this demo, and but yeah, I mean, this is a really powerful tool because it gives you even information about the time frames in which that person goes online, which device they use. So when you want to have to undergo targeted attacks, then it is very important. Now let's see, there's been some sort of mistake here.
¿No habrá acabado con mi nombre el archivo?
Let's just check where the mistake might be.
Si no, lo vemos desde aquí directamente.
Maybe you have saved it with a different name. Otherwise, we can just check it from here.
Este es el report. Estas son las imágenes que ha descargado de los últimos tweets. Vale, aquí vemos una donde aparece Carlos.
So this is the report. These are the pictures it has downloaded from my last 100 tweets.
Vale, pues lo que voy a hacer es decir, mira,
and you can see one
la cara de Carlos,
which features Carlos. See?
Y búscalo en
That's the picture that we took when we were coming here. So what I'm going to do now is tell the tool, please look for Carlos's face, his profile picture, based on his profile picture on Twitter.
Diferentes imágenes, en este caso pues había 4, 5, 6 imágenes. No había personas.
And look for it on this directory, which is where it has downloaded all the files.
Carlos, en esta imagen, si cargamos esta imagen, es la que habíamos visto anteriormente. Al final, con todo eso, lo que
we have different pictures. I think in this case we had about 4 or 5 pictures. In one of them, only there was people. And finally, it says I have identified Carlos in this picture, which is the picture that I had shown you earlier. So basically what we're trying to tell you is how automatically, without having really to do anything, we can identify people, and this can be interesting for different purposes. In this case, we're talking about a demonstration, but you could be trying to identify who this person is usually with, who his friends are, who his family members are, people who have been tagged in a picture. And sometimes you have social networks, or even you don't even have social networks, but you cannot control that people around you might tag you in a picture, and even if you're not on that social network, you can be your name can be published on Twitter, so that is a way of knowing the people you usually go with. We're going to continue the presentation now.
Tema de redes sociales. Al igual que hemos visto, un ejemplo es Steamfolix, podemos obtener información pues, a raíz de diferentes alias, correos. Si sabemos a esa persona dónde puede trabajar, hemos hecho una extracción de correos y podemos tener un correo personalizado. Hemos buscado esos correos en qué redes sociales.
We've been seeing with Teamfolix, for example,
y una vez tenemos información,
just with the information of an email address, if we know where that person works, for example, if we have extracted email addresses and we can see which one might be used, we've looked for that, we've searched that email address in different social networks. So once we have the information and we know where we can go looking for that person, comes the next stage, which is, well, now let's work with those social media.
Sí. ¿Sí? Vale, espera.
No es el día de los proyectores hoy.
No. ¿Se duplica? Vale. Aquí, por ejemplo, podemos observar, esta es una red social, esta es VK. Cada vez antiguamente no tenía mucho éxito porque parecido a Yandex, es una red social que utilizan sobre todo países y rusos, pero cada vez vemos que tiene una mayor actividad. Cada vez tiene en España y otros países.
This is social media, and this is VK. It didn't used to be very successful because it's used by Eastern countries and Russia, but now it's getting more popular. In Spain and other European countries, it's being increasingly used. We looked for a profile, and I thought it was interesting because it gives us relevant information, such as his date of birth. And if we look at the entire information regarding this person, unlike Facebook, it does give us personal information. It gives their political ideology, their interests, the books that a person might like to read. And this person is following a right-wing, far right-wing group, and I thought that was particularly interesting. And in terms of investigation, you're able to get into these kinds of groups. Another of the profiles that I thought was interesting was Mario Seat. This might seem like an anonymous profile because of the name. We have information on his date of birth and the last time this person connected to a device. This might be a hidden profile because of the information that was given, but we do have the name of his children and grandchildren, and his Twitter account, Facebook account, beliefs, and so on, and even photographs and complementary information. If we go onto the Twitter account, for example, we can have a look at something else. We get to this account. We have a Google Plus account. It's active, and it gives us the confirmation of the date of birth. And this is particularly important in terms of keeping the little bits of information that we talked about at the beginning. Save that information so it can be analyzed later on. In this particular case, it's Russian social media. We must not only think that Russian social media is for Russian people, but other people might be on there as well. And this might be vital information for our investigation. We can gather all this information and cross-check it. We would like to show you other different tools, but we don't have time here, but we can use different sources to make up a profile, download it in the file format that we were looking at before, and then I'll analyze it afterwards. Now we have an extract here from an account on TinfoLeak. It's Vicente and my profile, and I'd like to show you some of the images that it produces, and I thought that was interesting in terms of analyzing a profile, in this case mine. It can be interesting not only the kind of tools that are being used, but also we can see the time of day when a person connects. So if I want to attack a given person or send that person an email address or any kind of file, then I need to know when that person might be connected or might be busier. At 6 o'clock, this person was not connected, and you can see the time range, so when that information might be of particular interest, and we can send them that relevant information and make the most of that opportunity.
Hicimos una pequeña prueba que fue por defecto muchas de las personas tienen activada la geolocalización. Incluso aunque nosotros a veces seamos inconscientes de ellos. Quería hacer una muestra.
I wanted to give you an idea of the photographs. We did a sample. Many people have geolocalization activated on their devices, and sometimes we do that without even realizing. You use Google to go from one place to the next, and then you forget to deactivate it. In this particular place, we published a photo when we got to the train station and indicated the location of where we were. And if we looked on Vicente's profile, we can see that same image. So here we get the different coordinates of these different people, but they can also be falsified. Maybe it's somebody that you're trying to fool. Maybe somebody would believe that this information is correct, and you can see where that person is connected. You can put in false information. You don't necessarily have to trust everything that is out there. We can get information from different profiles, and we can even get from different platforms. We can even get a profile. And we have to know whether or not that information is correct, whether it's true, but the bad guys are clever as well. And fake name generator, for example, on this tool, we can create a fictitious profile. So if I want to have a Facebook account and I want to make it look real, I can just set up the name and surname. Here, with this tool, you can set it up in a random name. It gives back numbers. They're not real, they're not operative, but they look real. If you want the name to be in Czech, if you want to select Spain as the country, for example, you can determine the age, and based on the information that we have collected during our investigation, we can decide exactly what we want to do. I don't really understand this thing about the percentage of male and female, but anyway. We have generated a name. We've said that we want them to be between 16 and 34 years of age, to be Spanish, and even the geographic coordinates where they might live. We can even find that photos are the tools that many people use. If we find that somebody is interacting strangely with us, one of the most simple things that we can do is to do a search using a profile picture to see if somebody's actually really using it on another account, or if it's a picture of a famous person and linked to a false account. Then we have services such as this, which is Person Assist, and this sets up random faces. They're not actually real faces. It's science fiction, this. These faces don't actually exist. These people don't actually exist. I can choose and have a look through, scroll through until I find the one that I'm interested in. And they look almost real. We can't do this with an inverse search. It will make us very difficult, and it makes it very difficult to know if the person that we're interacting with is actually real or somebody using these kinds of tools. We commented geolocalization, and we can actually falsify that information if we want to. We might need to use a beacon at any given time, and we can use that once I've created a digital beacon. I can use it to create an interesting URL and that my objective might be interested in. So I'm going to a Black Friday offer, and I'm going to select these shoes. I'm interested in that, so I copy down the URL. And then I go across here.
Me ha generado un acortador.
So we have the image that we were looking at with the special offer. And this has created a short URL. And it's this one that we can see here.
¿De acuerdo? Si yo accedo y cierro esta página, ver si no me lo genera. ¿Dónde está? Puede ser el mismo. No me lo está creando. Es el mismo. A ver. Vale, puede ser el mismo. Es el mismo. Ah, vale, perdón. Vale. Generamos. Esto lo que nos va a permitir va a ser, nos va a hacer un acortador, nos va a cortar este enlace, nos va a proporcionar, vale, no, sí que es este, creo. Generamos, nos va a proporcionar, esto lo que nos va a permitir.
So what we can do with this is to get a shortener, and we're cutting down this link.
¿Vale? Que nos va a ayudar directamente a la página original. ¿Pero qué ha sucedido? Si yo reviso, resulta que aquí el acortador lo que ha hecho es, ¿vale? Que nos va a ayudar directamente por esta página web.
So we end up with a link that takes us to the original page. But what has happened here, if I take a look, then down here the shortener has cut the domain name to make it shorter, but it's linked to this web page. So here IP logger sounds a bit suspicious. So if I go to a shortening service and I give it another additional layer,
a la aplicación, a la página web original que yo quiero que mi objetivo vea para que no sospeche.
And I go back again and I connect again. And I give this shortened URL to my objective. It takes the person to the original web page so that the person doesn't suspect anything. It's just downloading, so we'll see it in a second. Now we will see the IPs to which the person has actually connected. So when we get shortened links or news, even when it's from somebody that we know well, it's a good idea to take a look at the lengthened version. Because there are services that allow us to lengthen those URLs. If somebody wanted to send us this URL through Twitter, for example, what Twitter would tell us is, be careful, perhaps you're going into a malicious page. But what you have is actually a blacklist. You can create your own shortener, and so Twitter would not detect that. And some of them don't even actually have that blacklist. If it's sent by WhatsApp, for example, there is no alert. Here we have Grabify. And currently this gives us a lot of information. It even gives us the resolution of a screen and the amount of battery that is left. But here you are given an alert. So just by clicking play in order to be redirected, how many pages tell you that you are being redirected? Well, many of them, so you just click on OK. And then you arrive at the page, you can't see that there's anything strange there. But in actual fact, the basic information about you has been left there in a trail. If they know the version and the operating system that we're using, somebody can attack us using this information. more and more we come across links, and even companies use these shorteners that we were talking about. Indeed, there's been a recent campaign by the ministry, and they created a shortener, and when people received this, they thought it was something of this kind. So what we've seen so far is that we've been gathering a lot of different information. We've got email addresses, all types of different information, organizations, nicknames, and so on. And there are specific tools in order to analyze this information. Some are free, some you have to pay for. But if the information we want to analyze is not too great in quantity, then we can go to this page, which is called Odono, and we can put all the information in there. We can gather it there in a visual manner. So in Onodo, we can look at companies that are listed on IBEX 35 and on the different business registries. And just using the name of a person or a company, we can see the relationship. You might have a given person, and you might want to detect that they're in Endesa, and they're also in Caixa Bank. So depending on the kind of objective we have, these kinds of tools can be very useful for our analysis. And what we find is that the cybercriminal has gathered all the information they wanted from social media, from LinkedIn, any sort of platform that we can think of. We have named the main social media, but we can find this person has an account on Twitter, or we can actually get their telephone number or extract their profile information or their identity from different platforms. So depending on the information the cybercriminal has gathered and the objective that they had at the beginning that we have mentioned before, in this case, the cybercriminal, in order to get an approximation and depending on the information they have gathered, might decide whether they need to use an avatar, which is a girl or a boy, with different features, all according to the information they have gathered. Or they might not even need anyone who is extremely good looking, because their target might be, or they're planning to launch an indirect attack, so they don't need to find anything too elaborate. So sometimes in order to just quickly approach an objective is creating an issue for that objective and then solving it for them. For example, on Twitter, I create a series of avatars and accounts, and I start attacking through different systems, or just by insulting or attacking the objective or criticizing their publications, depending on what my aim is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to criticize that person through my avatar, start making them feel defenseless, and that's where I come in. I come in and I start interacting, attacking and destroying those people who were criticizing in the first place. So from there, that person unconsciously will be thankful to me. So when in social media you find that someone is criticizing you, and then all of a sudden someone you don't know is starting to helping you just out of the blue, then be suspicious. And then we have the second approach, which is an indirect approach. We have analyzed the information. We have seen that our objective, Juan, is married to Lydia, has a brother and has a daughter. Maybe I have to choose. Maybe I don't want to have a direct approach because I don't want them to get suspicious. I just create different avatars and I approach every single one of the people I want to get close to. And in this case, for example, I get Lydia or Jose,
and I approach them little by little, because one of the first things you should do is that when someone you don't know asks to be your friend, sends a friend request, you have to wonder, why do they want to be my friends? Maybe we don't even have friends in common, or we might even have friends in common, but in that case, we have to ask that person whether they really know the third person that is sending us a friend request. And we are running out of time. I have already mentioned this example, but that is what I was mentioning earlier about geolocalization, how we can so easily get a user's IP. It's true, we have to know that they might use VPNs or any sort of proxy, but depending on our aim or our objective, we will be able to know straight away whether it is enough to use these tools or not, depending on the result that we're getting. And, well, we've said earlier, I wanted to mention here Onodo, the platform I've just shown you, which can be very interesting if we want to have a graphic representation of our results in order to have quality information and to show this information. So, once we're here, we just wanted to show you we have 10 best practices that we have listed here, and these can help us to detect criminal activity, to help us protect from that. For example, ego surfing. Just look yourselves up on the internet. It's not because you want to see what people say about you. It's because it's important to use it and use different combinations. It's very important to know, for example, responsible use of corporate accounts. We haven't mentioned this, but through all the information that we have gathered on LinkedIn and different social media, you just go to different platforms where these links are and you can get information. What happens, many people just sign up to different networks, such as Badu, for example, with their company account, and I'm not going to get a new email address because then I have to do more work, and that's what can bring issues. So everything we're not going to be able to defend ourselves from, let's just not make available, not just because cyber criminals can use the information from our account, all the information that we're making publicly available, but because in the future, and this has happened to public figures, that they have been embarrassed about information that they published years ago, then use a double authentication factor so that people cannot use our information. You can also get alerts if someone is using your information so that you can go a step ahead of them and change your password. And of course, do not reuse passwords because if someone finds out your password because they've gathered it from LinkedIn or Badu or any other service, if you're using that password for your company account or for anything else, then they are going to have access to that as well. Metadata as well. There are applications, even for mobile phones, that allow us to delete metadata from everything that we're uploading so that we don't share information that we don't want to share, really. Applied configuration as well. When you install applications, make sure that they cannot connect to your application so that people cannot add you, that you don't know them. For example, disable geolocalization. You might want to have a private profile rather than a public profile. Just have a look at the privacy options that that platform gives you. For example, then no one can look for you through your email address, because in some platforms people can do it. So if I just find one of your email addresses, might be a leak. I don't know who this is from, but through social media, I might be able to identify who the person is that uses this email. And there are also campaigns where there are leaks, and they say, we've been filming you when you were watching pornography or doing anything more private. They give you your password and your username. They can even get your social media from that email address. So make sure that that you do have your security configuration, your privacy configuration. Always double check when someone sends a friend request. Just double check and make sure whether you should let this person get into your circle. And above all, as we were saying at the beginning, we were talking about social engineering. When someone sends you an unusual request, just don't trust them, regardless of where this comes from. Even if it's supposed to be my boss, if my boss is asking me for something that they've never done, such as transferring 4 million euros, just don't do it, because we're seeing more and more that tools get more difficult to be identified, that they can change videos, or they can get a picture from a video, like one of the pictures that we've created, then make a video with that picture, making that person try to interact with me. And we've even seen cases where someone starts a conversation with you, even on Skype, in real time. You are talking to this person. Are you sure that I need to transfer this money? This might be the CEO or your boss, one of the managing directors. You realize that this is the person. You identify them. This is in real time. There's no one behind that person. And basically what they're doing is taking a person and using the picture of the other person to simulate that it is that person who's talking to you. Or, for example, when you get emails asking you to make a transfer or to change the bank transfer, is that they have infiltrated the company's communications, and through artificial intelligence, they take the writing pattern of that person and they replicate it so that it's as similar as possible, and it's hence more difficult to see that it's a scam. Well, we're really sorry about the little technical inconvenience, but thank you so much for being here, and if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer. If we can help, just let us know.
Si no, vamos a estar por aquí.
Otherwise, we're going to be around here. Carlos, Vicente, thank you so much.